in doing these clinics over the last, 15 years or something, I kind of wanted to make a more special event everywhere we would go. And so I got the idea of going out with our own production and bringing another great drummer who's also a good friend and someone who I can really relate to on the road. And so I chose Chad, and we went out and we did 20 dates in the Southeast, which were really a lot of fun. And the structure was basically I would play, well, he would play about an hour and I'd play about an hour, and then we would do some duets. And just to make it fun and interesting, because of our history with Frank Zappa, we decided to resurrect the Black Page as a duet. So we're playing the Black Page drum solo #1 in unison. And we had so much fun. And for me, how this works is you have two musicians who have all this experience, technical experience in terms of just how to play the drums, different effects one can get out of the drum set. Then, and on a very high level, having read with Frank and played this orchestral music with him. And then on the other hand, all the musical experience we have in terms of Chad and I both being composers, band leaders, knowing about composition, knowing about orchestration, form, structure, melody, harmony. And then our experience with jazz, which is this interactive listening and improvisation
aspect to it. Yeah.
And so with that, it's almost like without any preconceived ideas, two guys like us can sit down and just go anywhere and make music out of it. And it's really been exciting and very fun. And
obviously different every night, too.
Yeah, obviously different every night. You know, a few things we kind of may rely on here or there. You know, you can almost like see us looking at each other and going, yeah, this is it. This is where it should end, or this is where we should go somewhere else. But for the most part, he'll hit on a polyrhythm, and I'll take that rhythm and we'll modulate rhythmically into another tempo. Or, you know, orchestrationally, things can be incredibly dense and heavy, and then go down to
just the opposite.
Yeah,
very
the barest whisper of bells or, you know, buzz rolls. So it's really been a lot of fun. And so here we are tonight at PIT, and we're going to do it
on video tonight.
For the camera.
Yep.
Yeah. Thanks so much for coming. For me, too, it's really been an honor and a pleasure to be able to play with Chad and for us to be able to share this kind of musical experience. I'm really proud of what Chad has done with his pieces, and I only have one new piece that hasn't been recorded, so I'm going to play that for you tonight, and then we're going to do some things together. This piece I'm going to play for you is called a harmonic etude. I have these piccolo toms, which I've developed for drum workshop, up here on the left side of my kit, which are tuned to an octave and a third of the white notes of a piano. This is called a diatonic scale. Now, within this limited amount of white notes, there are a certain amount of chord progressions and arpeggios that I can do. So using the limited amount of chords I had available, I made myself what I think is a nice little piece. And so it's not about rhythm. It's not really about melody. It's about the harmony. So if you'll listen with that in mind, I hope you'll enjoy it. This next thing we're going to do is I'm going to bring Chad back out here. And having both of us worked with Frank Zappa, we thought it only fitting that we resurrect the Black Page #1, which is written by Frank as a solo drum set piece. And it's published by Munchkin Music and available on Zappa.com if you want to know what's going on with it. It's a fantastic piece of through-composed music for the trap drum set. Zappa walked into a rehearsal one day and said, "What do you think of this, Bozzio?" and handed me this piece of music, which, well, you know, it is the Black Page. It's so full of notes that the page appears black. This is where the name came from. We were doing an orchestra gig at Royce Hall, and we had 40 or so of some of the best percussionists and instrumentalists in this town that had been very famous in doing session work and also with the symphony. And he noticed during coffee breaks and stuff that they all sort of lived in mortal terror of what they called the Black Page. And this would be a situation where they'd get called for some innocuous little jingle at 7 o'clock on a Monday morning and come in and be faced with a page full of notes that was so filled with notes that it appeared black. So hence the name, the Black Page. And Zappa decided to write his own version of it, and I was his guinea pig. So I fooled around with it for a couple weeks, just about, I guess, 20 minutes a day or something before rehearsals. And in a couple of weeks, I had it mastered, and I could play it for him. So he took the music back and then wrote the rest of the melody and harmony to it. And soon after that, we began playing it with the band. It's been recorded on Live in New York and in Baby Snakes with Ruth Underwood and Eddie Jobson, a whole lot of other characters. And now I'm going to bring Chad back out, and we're going to play it for you together as a duet.
Well, that's more fun than two individuals have had in probably ever.
Well, Terry's easy to play with. He's
And
probably one
that's
of the
how
most
I feel.
easiest musicians I've ever played with.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
you could
just
tell.
I mean, the time it's so locked internally with what he does. It's like you just jump on, and it's really simple.
But also Chad's really sensitive, you know, and he really, well, we both try and adjust, you know. It's not like, here's where it is, you follow me. Well, yeah, that's the dynamics and the melodies and the harmonies and all that stuff is part of the compositional aspect. But in terms of
And
ensemble,
listening.
yeah,
I mean, the whole
it's a-
improvisational thing is really about listening. And
Yeah.
if Terry's taking it somewhere, you need to be sensitive to that.
and
I can go with him. I can leave him alone. I can let him go there, or I can play counterpoint over it. There's like a whole world of musical possibilities,
Yeah.
which is it's really exciting.
Oh, man, thank you so much. Terry Bozzio, ladies and gentlemen.
And Chad Wackerman. Thanks to DW Drums for the wonderful instruments, and hopefully we'll see you again sometime. Thank you.
Once I passed the audition test, which was like a 3-day ordeal for me, I went through that whole process, and then I met Frank up at his house the next morning, and he gave me a stack of music, and he said, look, I mean, Terry was in the band, and in between Terry and myself was Vinnie Colaiuta, who was another unbelievable, another one of my favorite drummers. Mm-hmm. But Frank kind of sat me down, and he said, look, you're going to be listening to these records and memorizing all this music. What I don't want you to do is become a Terry clone or become a Vinnie clone. So, at first it was a great relief. But then he also said, look, once you learn the notes, I want you to put yourself into this, because I'm hiring you, not, which again was just a great relief and enabled me, which Terry probably, he certainly let you put your voice into the
I always
stuff.
say I feel the drummers had more freedom in Frank's group than anyone else. First of all, Frank was a drummer, so he really related to us. And second of all, the aspects of composition on the drum set are not as composers aren't that savvy as to what can be done on it, so they tend not to write everything note for note. So, for instance, in Frank's band, we would work by ear a lot of times. He would play a crazy phrase, and you would just, imitate it, or else he would write a chart which was subject to interpretation, but it had kicks and punches and things that you would do with the ensemble, or like the Black Page or his orchestral stuff, it would be written out note for note. And he really had an intuition for what to do on the drum set, as opposed to other charts I've read by composers who may be a great piano player but haven't got a clue what's going on with our instrument.
Also, the other mode would be it's a rock and roll song and there's an classical interlude. So once he would just hand you one page of music or two, and that stuff needed to be played as if you were in the symphony orchestra. But everything around it, the stuff before and after was, you put your heart and soul into it. So.
Yeah. Well, you get used to this level of difficulty that doesn't get more difficult. It just there's more of it,
True.
And it's just constant. So you're almost just like used to that. Every sound check was a rehearsal. Every night we played different arrangements. Every night there'd be improvisational things or hand signal events that would happen, and they were always different. And you had to kind of be on top of whatever the latest signal was, or some event that had happened during the day that was going to be made fun of, or what have you.
Theme of the night. Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to say too, with Frank, when we first joined, I really was coming from a jazz and classical space, and I had a hard time finding where I was supposed to be in this ensemble. And I used Ainsley Dunbar and Mitch Mitchell as sort of something to hold on to, some signpost to get my bearings. And then after a while, I was able to sort of stretch and develop my style. But with Frank, it was always, if he liked what you were doing, it stayed. If he didn't like it, he would change it. So there were a lot of aspects of personalization in this that were under his scrutiny, but developed by the people who played for him. So it was a great situation.
And it was kind of funny because at first, Frank rearranged the seating plan with the orchestra, and which, of course, orchestras don't like change whatsoever. Any orchestra, just the way he wanted to hear it with the miking, and so he had kind of me next to the concertmaster, drum set, which was completely out of place for the symphony orchestra, right next to the concertmaster. So that lasted for about 10 minutes before, they were kind of ready to strike. So, okay, fine. And also, just miking-wise, even the ride cymbal going into the violin mics was ridiculous. It was like, ding, ding. It was not the right place. So I went back with the other 8 percussionists, where I was much more comfortable, and there was a hang back there anyway, so you know how drummers are. It was an amazing thing. It was all Frank's 20th century classical music that he had written for symphony at the time, and he brought over a wonderful clarinetist, David Ocker, and Ed Mann, playing marimba and all the stuff, and myself, so I felt incredibly honored. And he was saying at the time, this hasn't been done drum set written into an orchestra this way. So we're, you know, you really had the feeling that this was a little piece of history there.
Mm.
So, and again, I was just so happy to be there.
Yeah.
That's excellent.
Same for me with the
Royce Hall.
Royce Hall, yeah,
Concert,
Orchestral
right?
Favorites was a very similar thing. He said, handed me all this really difficult music and said, I'm hiring 40 of the best session and classical players in Los Angeles, and we're doing 3 days at Royce Hall, and we're going to record the whole thing. And it's with 4 of the top percussionists in Los Angeles, Tom Rainey and Alan Estes and John Bergamo and the immortal Emil
Emil?
Richards. Yeah, so scary and fun, you know, and really a great sense of accomplishment, you know, having gotten through that and having been a part of it. What not?
Well,
I mean,
yeah, I mean,
just
the-
pan the camera over there and look at this as
Look at
opposed to
everything.
any
Look at-
other instrument.
Look
made
at the
on
double
planet.
pedal. I mean, look at the remote hi-hat. Look at
Yeah.
the cymbal stacker. I mean, everything. And, you know, early on, John Good was my drum tech with Zappa and with Holdsworth and with Men at Work. So, I mean, you know, I heard about a lot of these early ideas when we're hanging out on the road, and I saw them come to life, and also, especially early on, was pretty involved with the beta testing of all of it. So,
For me, if you're talking about flavors of drums, okay, it's a subjective thing. So one may like another company's drum sound. But for a full line drum company, there is nobody that makes the top of the line pedals, the most innovative stuff going on in pedal work, the most innovative, flexible, and strong hardware. Everything is thought about. You know, I've got 14 cymbals on one stand over there, okay? It's not meant for that, but it does it. Everything's memory locked, everything's the utmost flexibility, the utmost strength. And then the sound of the drums are the best, okay? Every drum is timbre matched, you know, it's all in a graduated pitch series. You'll never get a drum that's lower than another one in your
Sequence of-
spectrum,
of
yeah, that's higher
tom-toms.
pitched than a smaller shell or something. And so it's always going to speak, it's always going to be dynamically equalized. You know, I don't understand why, but my little 8s somehow make the same amount of volume as my big 18. And John, you know, works all that kind of stuff out. I've gotten to the point now where I use strictly ambient miking, you know, an overhead and some kind of mics around the outsides of the toms, because the kit is so balanced dynamically. All I'm trying to do is recreate what's happening acoustically. My cymbals are not louder than the drums. My drums are not louder than the cymbals. My low drums, you know, which are big head sizes, are not, you know, drowning out my little 8-inch piccolo toms. So somehow they work all that stuff out. Then, every time we go out there, there's probably about 4 or 5 finishes in exotic woods or stains that just
They're
make you want to
new.
cry. So, you know, it's a great thing, and they are the best, and we're really happy to be playing such a wonderful instrument.
absolutely. I mean, you know, once you get comfortable, that kind of balance in your kit and the whole kind of tone that you're getting from the entire kit, and if you're ever in a situation where you do have to play something else, you just don't feel like playing. I mean, and also the instrument really becomes your sound too. I feel very strongly about that.
Yeah.
And if you're getting your sound, it inspires you to play. It inspires you to play better.
Yeah, there's a lot of variation in how one can tune the drums and how one can establish a sonic personality with DW. You know, but just if you go to a music store and you tap 26 drum sets, the DW one will stand out like a good sore thumb.
Consistent.
Yeah.
That's why.
And you know, the other thing is they're open to our suggestions. It's never like, oh well, this is a stupid idea, or leave the designing to us. You know, we're able to contribute. They'll take anything into consideration or under consideration. And all the so-called custom stuff that I have up there is, you know, they'll make for anybody. And, you know, I know a lot of stores go for a typical 4-piece kit. A lot of drummers don't have the same kinds of demands that I have. But should one arise in Illinois somewhere that wants a long, extended remote bass drum linkage, you know, they'll make it for them. You know, a three-point gong stand is not, you know,
Out of the
your
question.
standard, you know, standard thing in the catalog. But recently, a friend of mine from Japan was saying, "Where did you get this three-point gong stand?" And they made him one, and that's that. You know, so all these things we have that look real fancy are just kind of innovative ways of putting together what they have as their stock and trade, but done in ways that suit our distinctive purposes. And that's the great thing about the drum set. It's a very young instrument. It's only been around 100 years, and
It's
formalized in the 20s and 30s, and for the most part in popular music forced into a rhythmic accompaniment role. And nowadays we're branching it out to the point where it's going to be a legitimate instrument that will be taught on a university level, and theory and harmony and melody and orchestration will all be applied to the modern trap drum set, because it's evolved to the point where we can do those things. And I see no difference between an organist who plays lines with his feet and, you know, 4 different voices with his 2 hands than the contrapuntal possibilities that are extant on the modern drum set.